The house wasn't just for sale. The house was for sale because a man had died in it. Or rather, murdered. I wouldn't have set foot in it for 100 years, not even to look at the color of the walls, but Jeff, being Jeff, managed to talk me into it. He saw it as a great opportunity. No one wants the house because someone died there. So what? It's ridiculously cheap. Not died, I said. Murdered. I should mention that the realtor refused to disclose the details of the tragedy, and that didn't sit well with me. He was hiding something. I would find out later, but by then, we were already in over our heads. Jeff shrugged, his way of dismissing a perfectly valid concern. The guy has to sell houses, that's how it goes. I'd do the same. I was convinced of that. We visited the house in June on a Saturday morning, and by the time we stood outside again half an hour later, I was in a foul mood. You didn't like it? Jeff asked. I rolled my eyes. I'm in a bad mood because I love it. 2 months later, we moved in, with one condition. The walls had to be painted. The wooden floors had to be sanded and lacquered, and we wouldn't take anything from the previous owners. Not even a cupboard door. All right, 3 conditions then. I have to say, once all of that was behind us, it really did feel like our house. Jeff's, mine, and Jonathan's. Jonathan is our 5-year-old son. The unexplained phenomenon began with him. The first few months were peaceful. We enjoyed the summer, the housewarming, the barbecues in the sunny garden, and the space we suddenly had after trading in our tiny apartment. Then came autumn. As if the falling leaves triggered something, strange things began happening in the house. Scary things. At first, they happened only at night and only in the living room. We'd come downstairs in the morning to find Jonathan's toy chest in a different spot, no longer in the corner next to the couch, but in the middle of the living room. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. It wouldn't let go of me. How could it? It didn't stop there. One December morning, I came downstairs and saw that the lid of the toy chest was on the floor. On the dining table were Jonathan's dinosaurs, his Hot Wheels, and his Legos. I recognized the scene. I saw it every day. The toys hadn't just been taken out of the chest. They had been played with. No matter how high I set the heating those days, I still felt cold. Winter was terrible. Almost every morning we found something out of place. It was always related to Jonathan. His raincoat wasn't on the coat rack but draped over a chair. His punctured soccer ball had been pumped up, and his Lego. The Lego was the worst. The castles Jonathan built would sometimes stay on the kitchen table for weeks to be admired. But in January, the structures started changing. Sometimes we'd come downstairs and find a dungeon had been added, filled with Lego figures, without heads. Just a month ago, a tower from a castle had vanished, and a yellow-blue-orange Lego knife, as big as my hand, was lying on the floor. The tip was made of red bricks. One morning I woke up. I was lying on something hard, and I saw that I was lying on Lego. All the pieces that had been part of a fire station downstairs were now in and under our bed, as if someone had been playing with it in the middle of the night. That was the final straw. Jeff finally agreed with me that we had made a big mistake buying the house. But the strange thing was, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to move because it felt like our house, like home. I called the realtor, I demanded an appointment at his office, and an hour later I was sitting across from him. I'm not sure if I was angry, terrified, or both, but my pleading worked. I finally learned what had happened in our house. The first thing I found out was that no man had been murdered. It had been a child. The murder, the realtor explained, was committed by a stepfather on his stepson. The man had terrorized the family for years, At first, only the mother was the target of the abuse, but the son, just 8 years old, was slowly but surely drawn into the violence. "What happened?" I asked. The boy stood up for his mother. He could no longer tolerate her new boyfriend beating and kicking her. "And he paid for that with his life," I said. It wasn't a question. The realtor nodded. The knife wounds were fatal for the boy. Knife wounds. I rushed home. The Lego mess had been cleared away by Jeff, but the pieces were still scattered on the table. When I picked them up, my breath stopped. The plastic blocks were ice cold. When Jeff and Jonathan returned home from school, I told them about my visit to the realtor. After much hesitation, I took Jonathan on my lap and told him about the dead boy. To my surprise, he wasn't scared, but looked me straight in the eyes. "That's Maddie," he said. I froze. "Maddie?" "He asked if he could play with my Lego. He never had any of his own." I felt my eyes prick. I thought for a long time and said, "It's time to say goodbye to Maddie." "Why?" my son asked. "Maddie belongs somewhere else. He deserves to rest." Jonathan pointed at the ceiling, his eyes questioning. I nodded. "Heaven, maybe. Yeah." Then Jeff and I watched as our son collected all the Lego pieces and arranged them on the table. He picked up a green square base plate and began quietly building. Flowers formed a garden, or maybe a park. He picked up white and gray pieces and made. I looked at Jeff for confirmation. He nodded. Gravestones. We sat next to him in silence. The three of us searched for pieces and built. It sounds strange. A beautiful cemetery. In the center was a brown coffin. Jonathan made a large blue M on it. We looked at each other. I know it sounds sentimental, and so be it, but something lifted off my shoulders. 6 shoulders, I think. We placed the structure on the shelf. We cooked dinner and watched a movie afterwards. Then we went to bed. The next day, nothing had been moved or changed. The day after that, nothing. Not yesterday either. We called the Lego structure Maddie's Field. It will never be torn down.